Hello, we're live. Welcome to the This Is Not Therapy Hour. I am Brandon Tessers. This is Bianca Savisian. Uh, we are both licensed therapists. Bianca is licensed in her home country of Romania, right? As a clinical psychologist. We are both licensed therapists, but this is not therapy for very, very many reasons. What it is instead is just an open conversation, like any other conversation. Bianca and I are here talking with one another. I should say, actually, before even getting further into it, we had some technical difficulties with our microphone. So we're using a different microphone than normal. I'm speaking up a little more loudly than I usually do. Hopefully that's coming across. Please let us know if you're not hearing us well. We'll see what we can do. Uh, yeah, we're just having a conversation. Bianca and I are here talking with one another about whatever it is that we're going to be talking about. Figure it out as we go along. And like any conversation, I'm paying attention to you and the things that you do and say impact what I think and what I do next, and vice versa. Bianca and I are doing our best to make our guesses about who you are, you, whoever's watching this, whether that's live or as a VOD later on YouTube. And our guesses about what you're interested in and how you're interpreting the things that we're saying and how we're impacting you. For those of you who are willing and able to participate in the chat, we appreciate that because it gives us a lot more information on which to base our guesses about who you are and what you're interested in, how we're impacting you. This is on the internet. Keep that in mind. That's one of the reasons that it's not one of the many reasons it's not therapy. And we will do our best to read out comments as they come in because we're streaming on 3 different platforms simultaneously, and each of you will only see the comments from the platform you're on. So those of you on Facebook will only see comments from Facebook and so on. So we'll read everything out to keep everyone on the same page. Please don't hesitate if you want to jump in. Don't worry about whether what you're wanting to say or talk about is on the same topic that we're already discussing. That's just not how conversations work. That's not how any of this works. We're going to go all over the place. Don't worry about that. And that can be questions and answers. There can be jokes, or it can be anything. We work with a private therapy practice called Effective Artistry. Our office is in Northbrook, Illinois. We do individual, couples, family, and group counseling with people in the state of Illinois and Wisconsin. We also work with a few coaches, of whom Bianca is one, that do executive functioning coaching, but each coach also has additional specialties. Bianca's in particular works with parent coaching, and emotional regulation, especially as a specialty. We also have people who specialize in doing creativity coaching, business coaching. So feel free to reach out to us for any of those reasons. I think that's pretty much it. I'm trying to do my whole spiel.
Hopefully someone will tell us if they can hear us or not.
Yeah, if anyone is there, and sometimes people aren't, or they don't join until later or whatever, but let us know. That as far as we can tell, it says that the mic that we're using today is picking up audio. We see the little bar going up. So as far as we're aware, it's working, but it's good. Can't hear you. Nice, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So we'll get the regular mic fixed up and working again for next week, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't here. Excuse me. I wasn't here when it happened, but apparently it just like fell fell like 2 feet, and the cord just like snapped in half. Yeah. It looks like it was cut. So weird. Anyway, yeah. How are you?
Good. So as long as I have you here,
yeah.
I want to go deep into executive functioning because that's one of the areas that I'm working on, and I wanna help clients understand it from your side and from your perspective.
Great. Yeah, just a little like quick backstory on Bianca is from Romania, licensed as a clinical psychologist there, moved here not too long ago?
Not too long, 2 years ago I moved here, definitely. Before that I was coming back and forward from Romania.
And licensure processes are very different in different countries, and so not licensed here at the moment, until it happens, it's indefinite, right? Yeah. But not a permanent situation. And in the meantime, focused a lot on coaching. We met Bianca when we were hiring therapists, and she's great.
Yeah.
You're great. And so we're in the process of going through like the licensing and credentialing stuff, but also doing coaching work in the meantime while that's getting sorted. So yeah, executive functioning. We do all of the coaches that work with us do executive functioning coaching. That's like my particular specialty, and I've been training people on executive functioning coaching. I don't know, 5 years now, 5 years or so. I've been doing it myself for, over a decade. I'm not exactly sure. Sometime around like 2010 probably is when I first started doing executive functioning coaching. Back then it was much more specific. Like I was learning it specifically through the lens of working with students, mostly high school students.
And what's your approach now?
With executive functioning coaching? So I don't unfortunately get the chance to really do much of it these days, more just training people on it. But we're always talking with people about. So executive functioning, this is the official definition that like nobody ever knows or can remember very well. Official definition of executive functioning is the hypothetical set of cognitive processes which allow a person to control their own behavior. So mostly when people are talking about executive functioning these days, and this is where I usually start when I'm doing executive functioning work with people, is exploring this and figuring out language and getting on the same page. Because mostly when people are talking about it these days, if they're talking about someone else, especially like kids or students, they're talking about like, are they organized and do they use a planner well and do they manage their time and get things done by deadlines and that kind of thing. Usually when people are talking about it for themselves, they're talking about all of that, but also the added context or piece, I suppose, of like how difficult all of that is, right? That especially there's a big focus on what's called initiation, which is like having an intention to do something and then actually getting started on doing the thing. Because as people start to explore for themselves, usually people who come to that language are coming to it from like, what's wrong? I know I should do this thing. I'm trying to do this thing and I'm struggling to do it. And that's how they learn about executive functioning.
Yes, but tell me more about how parents, because I recently I was getting to this impression that mostly the parents that are getting their kids diagnosed right now, the first instinct is to go into, okay, how do I make him do this thing today at this hour, and how can we better explain how what's our perspective. We're not saying that any other perspective is wrong, but what's our perspective on that?
Well, so that's why I like to start with talking about what executive functioning is, to set the parameters of when we're doing executive functioning work, including even as a therapist. If I'm doing executive functioning work, binge watch a bunch of OK Go videos as emotional support media, and one of their songs made me think of you, Brandon. Have you heard Upside Down and Inside Out? I don't remember. I have also watched like all of OK Go's. I mean, it's been a couple of years, but I do like to watch their. This is a band that does like really interesting music videos. I think that is one that I have heard. They have a lyric. Gravity is just a habit that you're really sure you can't break. I am also a musician. I don't know if you even know this about me.
No.
I mostly a vocalist, but I play guitar and I was in bands back in the day. And there was one of the songs that I wrote, I'm going to try and remember because it had a line about gravity. Well, it said, I do not believe in gravity no more. Talking about like being able to just opt out of gravity by believing in it. So that is cool.
That's
made me think about what you always say about expecting gravity to always work. Yeah. So I like to clarify the parameters when we're talking executive functioning. We're not talking about whether somebody wants the right thing or wants it enough. We're just talking about whether a person's behavior follows on their intention.
Correct.
So the example I always use to help people understand that is like, give me a thumbs up, and they do. And what we know is that you have a thought, some intention to give a thumbs up, and then your body does this thing, something that you and I and everyone would agree counts as like what we mean by giving a thumbs up. We also know that in between somewhere, like electrical signals are firing along nerves and ending in muscles and making them contract like just the right amount, but not too much, and a bunch of different muscles all in concert with one another. This incredibly complicated process that everybody forgets is very complicated because we're not babies anymore and we've done it for a long time. But I'm talking about music. Try to learn how to play piano or play the guitar and see how difficult it is to teach your muscles to cooperate with each other in these precise ways. So what we're talking about when we say executive functioning is there's some process by which the intention, the thought of like, I'm going to give a thumbs up, gets translated into specific like commands to the body somehow and results in the actions being taken. And those things, we have no idea what they are. That's why it's a hypothetical set of processes. The whole point is that with behavior, I can observe behavior, I can observe your behavior, you can observe, anyone can observe what a person's body is doing, right? Yeah. With intention, that's in the subjective internal experience. I can observe my own thoughts, my own consciousness, I am aware of it. You can observe your own. We can't observe each other's, but we each observe our own. And then there's this other thing that I don't observe on the inside, nobody observes from the outside, that translates what's in my mind into some set of actions that my body actually then takes. Okay. That stuff is important, and we hypothesize about it. We have all kinds of theories about what it is and how it impacts people, but can't be known, always hypothetical. And that's what we're talking about with executive functioning. So in executive functioning work, we're only ever talking about the extent to which somebody's actions are following through on their intentions, right? If somebody was to say like, my kid's not doing his homework or whatever, and we're working with the kid and he says, yeah, I don't really want to do my homework. We don't do anything about that with executive functioning work. If someone intends not to do something and then they not do something, that's executive functioning how it's supposed to work. Executive dysfunction is when we have an intention and then what we end up doing is different than that intention. Okay. And that's where we work to support people with executive functioning, is when their actions aren't following on their intentions. And that runs all over the place. But that's part of why we have structures in place about how we work with not just kids, especially kids, but anyone who somebody else is the person who's like doing the initial like reaching out or prompting for this work to happen. Like we do this with college students a lot too. Still parent-child, but not like literally a minor. Where we need to be very clear that it's about what the individual in the work is wanting to do, not what anybody else is wanting them to do.
How can we help parents in this process?
Well, usually parents aren't looking for executive functioning support when they're doing this kind of thing because they're not having questions about whether their behavior is following their intention. Okay. So usually we're looking at like parenting, coaching, and support. And some of that is definitely helping parents to understand how everything works a little bit differently than they do. We talk about the simplest answer that works is the best one. Mm-hmm. Because we are finite, we only have so many resources. The brain is a cognitive miser. We don't like spend resources without a reason. So the simplest answers that are given to us are the ones that are utilized until and unless a problem happens. Okay. And so one of the rules that I like to teach parents, I mean, everybody, but especially parents, I call it ask once, then ask why, is if there's something you want your kid to do, just ask. You don't need to think it through and justify like, is this a reasonable request or is this a good or a bad thing to ask or what are the consequences? You just ask. In fact, the less effort you put into thinking through the request before making it, the better off you'll be. Mm-hmm. And if in response to that first request, it doesn't go that way, right? They say no, or they don't listen or whatever. Then you do the work of being like, okay, well now I got to think, why am I asking this, right?
Do you think about why are you asking this, or do you think that the best approach would be to ask the child why not?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I want to go back at that point and ask myself, why am I asking this? Before asking why not. In order to lower the bar mm-hmm. on being able to just ask for whatever I want to ask for, I have to make sure that that's not going to like cause problems for my kid, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to just say something on a whim that turns out to be harmful or bad or whatever for them. Mm-hmm. So that's why we put all this thought in on the front end before we ask. But by doing that, we also make it so that if they then say no, well, we've done a lot of work to make sure that what we're asking is good for you. And so you saying no is a problem.
Okay.
And we approach things through that lens. And it's not that that's not ever true. It's often true. But over time, we kind of think of that as like always the case. The more we do that, the more we just assume it's always the case. When there's plenty of times that I just like want you to turn off the volume because it's annoying me or whatever. And I don't need to think through all that. I can just say, hey, will you turn off the volume, please? And if they say, oh, no, it's important for whatever reason or whatever, then I can think about, well, why am I asking? And I can say, well, it's bothering me or whatever. But we want to do that second. And yeah, because we don't want to respond to someone, and again, we're talking about parents and kids, but this is true of everybody. Can we help kids raise their parents? This is true of like all communication and all requests. Is I don't want anybody putting work into thinking through like, is my request justifiable or merited? Just say what you want. And
because then the expectation of the parent will be at a different level if they put too much work on it, right?
Right. Think of it, the example I often use is if at the very first moment I start thinking that I might like to drink water, I say, hey, would you get me some water? And you say no, like, okay, fine. But if instead, when I get that first desire for water, I'm like, no, I don't want to ask, it's not that big a deal and you're tired and whatever. And I wait and it builds and it builds and it builds. And now it's like, okay, now I need some water or I'm going to be in a really rough place or I'm like really struggling because I need some water. That's how bad it is. And now I ask, hey, can you get me some water? If you say no now, it's like, what? You don't even care if I die? Like all I'm asking is for you to just hand me a glass of water to save my life from dying of dehydration, and you won't even do it, right? So this dynamic, it goes into all different kinds of relationships. It causes problems all over the place. As a general rule, I'm almost always trying to help people to be able to say what it is that they want, like much sooner.
Makes a lot of sense.
Because the problem is that it gets into this escalating, call it cycling up, a feedback loop where things get worse. Is, okay, if I don't ask until it's really bad, and then when I ask and they say no, it really hurts me. Well, then I don't want to ask for help again because I asked and they said no and it really hurt me. So now I try and hold back on the requests for help even more, or they got angry, or they were annoyed at me feeling entitled or whatever. Every time it doesn't go well, I'm then like, well, I shouldn't. I'm just going to try even harder not to ask for help.
Okay.
And so then it's even worse by the time I ask for help, and the experience is even worse, and so on. And it just gets worse. So like commonly people will be like, I can't tell people about when I'm angry with them because if I do, they get really upset and whatever, which is generally a true thing. People that you care about will be upset if you're angry with them. So that's why I can't tell people about my anger. But if you told them about the thing that was making you angry much earlier in the process, I mean, a lot of the time you wouldn't even be angry by that point. It would just be a simple, like, little thing that isn't a big deal. Also, if you're not asking because you're worried about how the response might go, then all you're really doing is acting as though that's how that person is going to respond, right? If I don't ask because I'm worried you'll get annoyed with me, then I'm treating you as though you were a person who would get annoyed with me if I were to ask. And that, like, over time is going to build up resentment with me of like, I can't believe I can't even ask you for help. Something I haven't done.
I haven't actually done, yeah.
But I'm not doing it because I think you'll be annoyed. And so then by the time I say it, I'm like, you never care about helping me and whatever, right? So same thing with, we're talking about the kids as a specific example of that, but the more effort we put in, we can call this sunk cost fallacy, there's all different ways of it. The more effort we put in before we make the request, the worse it's going to go if that request is not granted the way we're asking for it. So I'm going to give a real example in a little bit, but first I'm going to give a real one, but not a super common and important one. It's like if my 4-year-old is standing up on a bench and I'm just like, hey, get down from there. And he doesn't get down from there, then I can follow up and do more. But if instead I see him on the bench, I'm like, no, let him, he's having, like it makes me nervous or whatever, but like, it's fine, he's having fun. And then, no, this is a safety thing. He could fall off, he could hit his head on the side of the table there. So now when I'm asking, I'm like, I need you to get down off the bench so that you don't fall and get hurt and you could hit your head on the side of the table. It becomes this bigger thing. And now if he doesn't do it, it's like, well, I just explained to you how it's a safety thing. And, I made sure that my request was a good one before I asked you. So now if you don't do it, I'm annoyed.
I think that this bites a little bit into the fact that parents are being told to overly explain, exactly as you said. We're trying to do things the best way we can, and then we get into our head, and before asking a simple thing, we make it like this big thing, and then we have the reaction that way.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
So one of the things that, hold on, there's a comment real quick. In retrospect, I provided EF coaching for adults. Renee, when you climbed up on the gym roof to help someone get there. Oh, remember when this is my father making this comment. Remember when you climbed up on the gym roof to help someone get their ball when the assistant principal called me in to tell me how wrong that was? I took him through a series of questions asking what did he do wrong. We were on the same page when I left. You're right, Brandon is a great kid. Yes, I was attempting to brag. That is a real story. In high school, my friends and I were playing soccer at lunch, and I went up on the roof and I just climbed up and got the ball, and someone saw me up there and got me in trouble, but it wasn't clear exactly what rule I had broken, and everything worked out fine. Yes, when it comes to parenting, I would say that this is true of like most of the stuff we talk about, but especially applies to parents. Because of the nature of parenting in our culture, this wasn't always historically true. In fact, this is only true like very recently. But the nature of parenting now is that I'm going to have a child and I'm going to have like a large amount of influence over them. At first, when they're a newborn baby, I'm in control of pretty much everything that happens to them. And then the older they get, the less influence I have. And eventually, when they're 18 or whenever, they move off on their own and I don't have influence anymore. So if that's what we're doing and we're treating as accepted here, because it is true for everyone we're talking about, that like I am genuinely invested in their health and success and happiness and well-being. I love them very much. Then everything is filtered through the lens of like, how does what we're doing now, how is that going to impact them for the rest of their life? And that's fine. I mean, it's
a lot of pressure.
It's a lot, but it's understandable, right? And there's nothing wrong with, in fact, an inherent part of raising kids is teaching young humans to become like conscious thinking humans. That thinking is entirely for considering the future and the possibilities and what things is it worth like making this sacrifice now or doing this unpleasant thing now because it will pay off later. That's inherently the point of trying to develop people's ability to think at all. But in our culture, particularly, this is my personal thing, particularly in like the 1950s, there's reasons for this, like the creation of the suburbs in the United States and post-World War II stuff. But Dr. Spock, that book, I forget what it's called, but Dr. Spock wrote the first like parenting expert book that became really popular. I want to say, this might not be true, but I'm pretty sure that it's like the second best-selling nonfiction book in the United States after the Bible. Like, what is it called? I can't remember, but it was hugely famous. It was the birth of like expert culture.
Okay.
For the first time, generations of families were being separated out. You were raising your young children and your mom didn't live in the same building with you. You would talk on the phone and whatever. So things have grown then, and we have this idea now that there's right and wrong about this stuff. Not right and wrong as in like good versus evil, right and wrong as in correct and incorrect. And so for 70 years, 80 years, we've been doing all this science and all this research to try and figure out like what is it that if we do this when a child is 1 year old plays out into success over the lifespan or whatever, which is great to do all that. But we're also like way overconfident in it and trying to do too many things. So what that results in then is parents thinking, understandably, everything I do is going to have like lasting impacts on this child. That's true. And the more that we do work for ourselves to become aware of how our childhood has impacted us and whatever, the more we're aware of that.
Yeah. And those are the parents that feel more overwhelmed.
So everything I do is going to impact them for their entire life. And B, I really want good things for them, then of course I'm going to be, as you point out, I feel pressure and I want to look for like somebody give me some evidence on like what is the right move to make,
Yeah.
because otherwise I'm going to be paralyzed with fear, thinking like, if I do this, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, like maybe I ruin it for the rest of my parents weren't jerks who were trying to ruin me, but they really messed me up in this way, or whatever people are thinking, right? And so yeah, we look for a level of expertise. We think of it, it's really just markers of credibility. We look for people to say to us, do this, don't do that, this is good, that's bad. And then we have a very high level of confidence about those things, about like, yes, that's definitely good. Unfortunately, that cuts the kid out of the equation. We're not talking to them about what they want and how things are impacting them. And without getting into any like deeper issues about research and bias and all these things, I'll just say this: even if all like research was spot on 100% correct, the research cycle takes like 5 years at best. Meaning, by the time that a question is posed, from the time a question is posed on like, we got to do some research about this, to the time that that research is like published and disseminated is about 5 years.
Yeah.
So there's some stuff that you just legitimately, literally cannot do effective research on because of how quickly it changes. And especially kids, like that's a big part of it. Everything's changing for each individual child so quickly. Everything's changing culturally so quickly. It's part of the reason parents always, not just now, have for a long, long time, parents have freaked out about changes in like media and the form that the media takes and the content. You know, like kids these days listen to crappy music is like a statement that every adult could have made for the last 100 years. You know, it's not like generational, whatever. So anyway, that's the thing, right? It's our insecurity about like, I don't want to mess up. I want my kid to be happy. I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. I don't want to be a bad parent. We get insecure. And that insecurity drives us to look for answers from authority figures. And then if what the authority figures are telling us is different than what the kid is telling us or doesn't seem to work in our situation, our first response is not to be like, well, I guess that authority figure was wrong about this or doesn't apply to my kid or whatever. Our first response would be like, God, how do I get my kid to do this thing? And so that's like a very difficult thing for parents and to work through with parents, because really, I mean, the kind of stuff I'm talking about now certainly can come up in parent coaching, but a lot of it is more therapy oriented too, to help parents just deal with the, hey, you don't know. You don't know. You don't know if you're going to, like 20 years from now. In fact, I can guarantee, no matter how confident I am in whatever I might do with my kids, I hope, I expect that 20 years from now, they're going to be pointing out things to me that I got wrong. That like, I hope that not only they, but society also generally like moves forward in thinking and comes to new conclusions and gets new information about things. And that's how it's supposed to work. We take what our parents give us and we start there, and then we spend our whole adult lives trying to like improve upon that, you know, fix any mistakes and buttress any shortcomings, you know, like make things better. And then we give our kids that. And we're very proud, and we should be very proud of like, I worked my whole life to figure out how to do this better than even my parents did, whether you like your parents or not. Even if you love your parents and think they're great, I still worked my whole life to give you better than what my parents gave me. And the whole point of that is that they start at a better point, and then they're going to work on improving our stuff. So they're still, no matter what, they're going to come back to us and tell us that we missed some stuff or we had the wrong idea about some things.
I love that, and I love the idea. I had a conversation with you, and that kind of clicked so much because, yeah, we are looking forward to some simplified things. Even as parents, we need some guidance. But the idea that we discussed was the fact that we don't see the power of relationship and how that can actually affect and change.
See, that's one of the flaws in the premise here. Like my son has reminded me what I got wrong, and yes, I'm proud of the parenting you provide with Susan, referring to me. Yeah, I am proud of the parent. To me, as a parent, like it's the one thing everything else in my life, I'm always to this day still like, I don't know, I might suck at this, right? Parenting is the one thing I'm like, no, I'm a great parent and I know it. Anyone can say anything they want because
How did you get there? Because most of the
because my
parents
kids
doubt
are
it.
awesome. That's it. Like if you're gonna say that my parenting could be better, if that's theoretically true, which I'm sure it is, but if that's theoretically true, that would mean that like my kids could be better than they are.
Hmm.
And I'm not really interested in exploring that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, makes so much
I think my
sense.
kids are great. And I mean, with hypotheticals, we can always, no matter what something is, we could always come up with like, well, it'd be even better if this
Yeah.
X, Y, or Z thing, which is something parents get really trapped in. They
Mhm.
compare their actual real life children to hypothetical alternative universe versions of their kids. And nobody ever does this in a way where the real life version is better. Nobody's ever like, well, my kids could be terrible, and
Mhm.
they're not. So that's awesome. I'm doing a good job.
Yes.
It's always like, well, my kid got a B, and he could have gotten an A, so maybe I'm doing a bad job.
Exactly.
So no,
But
my
but
kids are awesome, so I know
how
I'm a
can we
great
help
parent.
the parents that are that have a really big struggle of that there are some areas that they feel and the kids also need help. They my question is if the kid is actively asking for help in some area
Yeah.
and the parent how can we help those parents?
Well, again, it depends, right? Because especially as kids get older, they learn the same things from the parents and from the culture generally. Like even if I make an effort to teach my children a certain thing and not teach them a different thing, they can still learn that other thing through the culture. And you asked about relationships. One of those things in our culture is this idea, we call it hyper individualism. This
Yeah.
this idea that an individual person and traits about them, the knowledge and the skills and the abilities they have, whether we're talking about intelligence or physicality or whatever, that's the primary thing that determines what happens in their life,
Hmm.
which is just not the case. And it's really sad with modern parenting in our culture that like it is taken as a given that once your kids turn 18 and leave the house, you're done, right? Like, which is a that was never the case in the history of our species. It's not how anything has been constructed or evolved. Not our culture, not our bodies, nothing. Like you don't move away. You live with your small group of people and you see all of them every single day for your entire life. This idea of like splitting up in that way is a very recent, within the last 100 years, 200 years at most, kind of idea. Um, and it's still not even true in our culture. Like we, my wife and I, we live here in Northbrook, which is the town she grew up in, and her parents live in this town, and we don't see them literally every day, but you know, unless they're out of town, we see them at least a few times a week. I mean, my father-in-law walks my kids to school every morning if he's in town. So there's some flawed thinking here where it's like, okay, we've got like 18 years to shape them, and then they're off, and there's nothing we can do, which increases that pressure instead of, I don't know about other people, but like when I was 19 and needed to make a doctor's appointment, I didn't like just know. I called my parents to see how to do
Yeah.
that or whatever. When I was, however old, 23 or whatever, and was short on rent, I was able to, and I know not everyone has these opportunities, but I was able to call my mom and borrow some money that I could pay her back later, right? Over and over again, when we do the research, it's also self-evident, but we do the research, and over it comes up that what correlates to happiness is the quality and quantity of relationships
Yeah.
more than anything else.
But still, we tend to override that and impose some stuff because some experts told us, and we actually damage the relationship with our kids
Yeah,
by doing that.
because of our insecurities.
Hmm.
And we end up setting them up, unfortunately, to be less happy because we're doing things that make us feel good about our parenting rather than things that are actually about whether. To take a common example, let's say here's some advice that people get given relatively frequently these days. It's like if your kid yells and they say they hate you and you're the worst and whatever, don't let your emotions get escalated in response. Don't show them that. Don't get angry with them, but also don't show them that they're hurting you. Just say like, "Wow, it sounds like you're having some really big feelings, and I can understand that." Like validate their emotions. So again, let's say, for the sake of argument, that that's actually like the best way to interact with your children. Even if that's the case, what happens then later when they're interacting with other people and they yell at somebody?
The person has a reaction.
Right. How well are we preparing them? Are we teaching? Is our intention to teach our kids that, like, hey, even if you yell at someone and say that you hate them, it's not a big deal. They'll still understand and say, like, I know you're hurt. And as much as I might like that to be the case, and certainly usually I would, like in therapy, I want to get people to a place where they can understand other people and whatever, but not always necessarily. And even if it was, that's not real. It's not going to happen. But let's set that aside and say, like, fine, they'll figure it out. That's not going to be an issue. Well, so why is the kid saying they hate you in this scenario?
They usually are looking for a reaction from your side.
Right. They're deliberately saying something that they think will bother you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you or anybody listening, if you're in an argument and you're angry with somebody and you say something to try and hurt them, something that you like probably aren't proud of later on or outside of the moment, but in the moment you're saying something wounding. And if their response is to say, like, I understand you're having some really big feelings here, like, does that make you feel better?
In the moment, not at all.
Because if nothing else, what we're saying is like, listen, kid, nothing you do impacts me. I am how I am, no matter what. You could say whatever, you could do whatever, you have no impact, which is the exact opposite of what children are trying to learn and figure out, is that they are conscious, intentional, impactful beings navigating the universe, and the things that they do impact the universe around them. I mean, imagine it's literally like a nightmarish hell scenario to think, like, what if you woke up one day and you couldn't impact anything? No one could see you or hear you. You couldn't move anything by touch. Like, that's a nightmare. So, no, do I want parents to like yell back? No, I don't think that's great.
That was actually my next question. How do you make? Because I think that there should be a balance. Because usually we know, even if it says in that moment that I hate you, I hope to die, for example, because they can go that far.
Sure.
How do we also know that it's not that much about ourselves? It's just their idea of trying to impact us in some way, and they don't.
The question really
want us
is,
to get out of their life
that
forever.
feels very, I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. There's a funny phrase that does get used here. There's a premise under that question that is the premise that we want to address here. This idea that, like, I should A, be able to, and B, like, I should, because it's good if I then do, manage everything in my own head without interacting with the child.
Mm-hmm.
That if they say something that hurts my feelings, I should make sure that I think about things in such a way to make it so that it doesn't hurt my feelings, which is absurd.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's possible, certainly. Like, there are definitely, we can think things and understand things in ways that, like, oh, this was hurting me, but now I'm thinking of it this way, and like, I get it, and it doesn't hurt me. It's not about me or whatever. But again, we're reinforcing them, not only to them that, okay, here's another. Let's say that it is actually beneficial to them in every way to respond in that way. Well, then what are we modeling to them about when somebody loves somebody, how do they act? That I'm great as your mom or your dad, right? I'm wonderful and I love you, and I'm doing everything to make things better. And in this hypothetical where this is all true, like, you are better off, and you theoretically understand that, right? Like, at some point you get the idea that because I'm reacting to you in this way, things are better off for you. If not, then what am I teaching you to do with your own kids or with other people? So theoretically, you're understanding that. And if you're understanding that and you're like, wow, my mom is the best. She's a saint. She's wonderful. And what she does is never lets her own feelings be revealed to anybody else if it's unpleasant. If somebody hurts her feelings, she makes sure that she doesn't get her feelings hurt before responding. She validates other people. If other people ask her for things that she doesn't want to do, she does it anyway. And she never asks them for things. So that's what a good person is to me. And either I do that too, or I'm a bad person.
Yeah, I hear you. I feel we're getting so much into trying to show some real unrealistic version of how people should be to our kids, and then when they deal with those kinds of emotions, they don't know what to do with them. They feel like I'm a very bad person for feeling jealousy or
Here's the
anger.
funny thing is, we're not the first in this cycle. Where do you think our insecurity and guilt comes from? Our parents were also trying to be good parents. This started long before us. This idea that I might not be a good enough parent, I didn't make that up. Me feeling guilty about not providing enough for my child, like as though my parents never felt that, never worried about doing better for me, and their parents didn't do that with them. The point of this all is that we're humans, and that's okay. Like, there are downsides to that. There genuinely are downsides. We do things, we think things, we feel things that just suck. I'm not saying that everything you feel is good and whatever. I'm saying, no, like, there are problems. We cause problems. Sometimes we get angry and we yell and we hurt people's feelings and we make people cry. And sometimes we do things that make it so that they're afraid to ask us a question in the future. You know, we do things that have the opposite impact that we intend all the time. But if we're going to roll around feeling terrible about that, A, it doesn't change it. B, it tells us and them that in order to be a good person, you got to feel bad about being a human all the time. So if you need justification, here's some justification. Not that I wish people didn't, but I know that we're looking for that. That how are you preparing them to interact with other people, right? Like somebody who, because we can all agree, like babies just cry, right? That's default. Something, I don't like something, something's uncomfortable, I cry until somebody else fixes the issue. Yeah. In theory, not that the baby's actually thinking that, it's just an automatic response. I just cry when there's discomfort. It's on the rest of us around the baby to like figure out the source of that discomfort and resolve it. Right. As we grow, we get trained to interact with people differently. If I'm currently 40, if I'm a 40-year-old man who like, when I feel any level of discomfort, I just start crying. And people are like, what's wrong? And I just keep crying. I don't even tell you what's wrong. I've never developed the ability to determine what's wrong because I just expect other people to like try things. No, you get abandoned. Like historically, evolutionarily speaking, like that person it's fine when you're a baby because we're developing, but eventually you got to start like contributing to the well-being of other people around you, not just being taken care of by other people. Otherwise you're a drain, right? Yeah. Wish that worked in my office. Yeah. So we do train people not to communicate that way, right? And unfortunately, again, because our culture focuses on what I refer to as an abstinence approach, where we identify, here's a bad thing, so don't do that thing, instead of, here's a good thing, let's make sure we're doing that thing. So it's like, yelling is bad, don't do it. Hurting people's feelings is bad, don't do it. And it's not that I disagree, like, yeah, I don't think that hurting people's feelings is like a good thing. But also, if you just tell people to not do it, then they're going to be constantly worried about whether they're doing it. And they're still going to do it sometimes, no matter how hard you try. You unintentionally are hurting other people's feelings sometimes. And then what? You just get paralyzed by all that. So, yeah, we do want our kids to understand, like, hey, you can't just go around like yelling at people and saying you hate them and expect that to work out for you. It doesn't work out. That will not lead to lasting relationships. So it's a very complicated thing, right? To figure out, like, at what point should I now be like, hey, you hurt my feelings? You know, what book can I read, or what are the rules to determine, like, they hurt my feelings and I should quash it, and now they've hurt my feelings and I should express it. Fortunately, we have solved this problem. Evolution has solved this problem, and you just get annoyed. You don't have to like go through some complex intellectual process to justify, well, they've done X, Y, and Z thing at this level for this duration, and now it's at the point where I should do something. You have inbuilt sensors. You get annoyed. You get frustrated. You get tired.
Okay, but help me understand this. How can we though? Because now, as parents, we also get a lot of external information that overwhelms us. I mean, if I had a bad day at the office, I'm going home and my level of frustration is way lower than it would be.
Let me ask you this. If your kid, they get extra frustration, they're at school, a bunch of stuff is happening, by the time they get home, their frustration level is higher. Yeah. Do you want to know about that?
I do.
And if they express the frustration to you, I mean, ideally, right, the nicest version of this is for them to just say, I'm frustrated, it's not about you.
Yeah, that's never
But like,
going to
even
happen.
if
Let's not
that's
set
something
up
that develops
unrealistic
as,
expectation for parents.
right, we want to try and get there. We hope to be there as adults, but even then we hit our limit, whatever. But so they've expressed their frustration or annoyance, not in that way. They're just
Mhm.
mad and snap. And I mean, I have 3 kids, like sometimes they're crying and screaming a lot, and it's like, okay, yeah, they've had a long day and they're tired. I don't have to I'm parents, you're allowed to like make inferences about what you think might be happening with your child. That's not like a dishonorable thing to do. Same with people for each other, by the way. Like, you're allowed to have your guesses and analyses and narratives about like why you think your partner is snapping at you. Now, you don't want to override their report, but
Mm-hmm.
okay, so now you've determined, wow, they're really frustrated. And then you do something, whatever it is, we'll skip that part, but you do something and now they feel better. How do you feel?
Right, for sure.
Yeah, you just helped your kid go from being frustrated to like being calm and happy. You did something that caused that. Like, you feel great.
Okay.
All right, so what if
What are you going with this?
so what if you come home from the office all frustrated?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the kid would like to know about it or not?
Yes, but here's this idea of burden, putting too much on them. Isn't that a real thing when you can, I
Well,
don't know, the parentified child, when you put too much on them and then they feel
what?
responsible for your problems.
When your child grows up and is in long-term relationships, whether that's romantic or with their own children or whatever, do you want them to have some sense that they have some responsibility to the people that they're in a relationship with?
I do, and I see where you're getting. That's why I asked you where are you going with this, because I understand, but
They are
there is a
responsible.
limit though. There is a
What's the
limit.
limit?
I don't know. Shouldn't it be?
If I think there's a limit, let's play this out practically, because it's not that I disagree, but that's an abstract,
Mm-hmm.
like, hypothetical question. What's the limit of like how much to let them know about and how much not? We could explore it and debate it, but it's certainly a philosophical question, not a practical one.
Mm-hmm.
So let's be practical. If I think that I should not burden my kids and I'm frustrated at my day at the office and I come home and I am frustrated, but I don't tell them and I make a great effort not to reveal to them in any way, shape, or form that I am frustrated, what's that going to likely do? Not for them, but for me.
My thought there was something different, because yeah, I definitely see the benefit of going and tell, listen, I had a bad day, I'm sorry, my level of frustration are low, and I can see how that can be beneficial. But I was asking, when we react, because you're saying that the importance of us to react to their behavior so authentically, but when do we know it's on them or it's just on me because I had too much and I need to.
If you had too much, what would you do? What would be helpful for you in that moment? That like they didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Take it off your kid, make it about your partner, your spouse, your friend, whatever, your roommate. They didn't do anything wrong, but I'm angry anyway. We're really relying that you're able, even though you're angry, to determine whether they've done something wrong or not, which is very unlikely to be the case. In fact, we're highly incentivized to make it so that they did something wrong in our mind,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we believe this. If I think if you didn't do anything wrong and I'm mad anyway, and I shouldn't burden you with that, then I can't tell you about it. And it would be helpful for me to tell you about it. In fact, it's the only thing that's going to help me is to talk about it and
Yeah,
interact with somebody.
that's correct.
But I can't burden you with it unless it's your fault. And then we think it's a coincidence that I just happen to also, like, every time I get mad, find ways that it's like, if you had done this other thing, I wouldn't be dealing with this. Brene Brown has, I forget which of her talks, but one of her talks, she tells this story where she's like, I'm sitting in my kitchen drinking my coffee and I'm wearing, actually similar to like what you're dressed in, like a full white outfit, top to bottom. I'm getting ready to go to some big thing. I'm drinking my coffee and I spill it and the coffee gets spilled all over my like nice white clothes. And immediately I say, God damn it, Steve. And then she says, now here's my like reasoning here is my husband Steve had gone out playing hockey the night before, which is fine and we had agreed on it, whatever. But after hockey, he went out with some of the guys and like hung out with them for a little bit longer than I expected. So he didn't get back until 11:30, and I have a hard time going to bed without him being there. And so I was up later than I usually was. And this was my second cup of coffee, which I don't always drink, and I wouldn't have needed to be drinking my second cup of coffee if he had been home on time and I could have gone to bed. Right. And that's all logical. And obviously she's telling that story in part of like talking about some of the things that we're talking about right now, about fault and blame and how absurd and ridiculous of a concept that is. But that we use it to serve a purpose. And the better solution is to make it so that we don't need to serve that purpose. In other words, if I don't need to justify it for me to just talk to you or ask you for help, then I don't need to make these narratives where you've done something wrong, so now I'm justified in talking to you about it. Because the logic is fine of that story, right? Like, it's true. Had he come home, she might have at least, or likely would have gone to bed early, and blah, 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 blah. That doesn't mean that what he did was wrong or that she had a problem with it or would have had a problem with it at all had she not spilled the coffee. And this is just like an annoying thing that happened that now is causing difficulty and tension in a relationship that doesn't need to. Do we want to teach our kids that they shouldn't burden us with their problems? And if you think, again, if you think that A, it's good to not burden them, and B, then therefore I don't burden them, then I'm being a good parent. And unless your child is a fool, you know, the whole point of this is that their life is good and they're happy, at least in part because of you and what you're doing, and they're not a fool and they understand that and they love you and think you're great. So again, what we're teaching them is, if you're a good person and a good mom or a good friend or whatever, you don't burden people with. If you think that all that's happening and then the kids are still just like, oh yeah, I'll ask for help and talk about when I'm upset without any problem. No, they are also then trying to we're teaching them to not communicate about their issues. This is a lot, it's just conflating things. I'll be very unequivocal about this. Hitting or physically harming children is bad. It is wrong under any circumstances. I suppose that like you could, if you wanted to come up with some absurd hypothetical where it's like hit them or they die or whatever, then sure. But no, in real life, no, that's bad. We don't want to do that.
Yeah.
We, in our culture, conflate anger with violence. Those are two different things. I can be angry and also not be violent. And people can be violent without being angry. Usually, though, when we observe or experience violence, usually the person committing the violence is very angry. And so we get this correlation in our mind that they're the same thing. And now we think about being angry as though it is bad, which is a big problem because you're not going to ever be able to never feel anger.
Yeah. So
you're just going to treat yourself like you're an abuser every time you get angry, or treat your kids like they're being abusive if they get angry at you. All right. You guys are rock stars. Happy to be here. Happy to have you here, Caitlin. I think you can communicate how you're feeling without making someone feel like they have to do something about it. Well, yes, but also I'm going to come back to that when we finish reading these. I think about this a lot with a friend because she has long-term health conditions and tends to talk about them a lot. I don't want to shut her down, but I also wish she could just explain, I'm sorry, brain fog, can you repeat that, without another 10-minute explanation about how awful she's feeling. Yes, that right there, that's the justification I'm talking about. Yes. I would want a person to be able to just say, can you repeat that, without even having to say brain fog. I want a person to just be able to say what?
Yeah, exactly.
Without having to explain it. And a good example of how when we feel like we need to explain it, it makes the problem worse for us and for the other person. Which I feel is a little unfair to her because she should be able to talk about it and complain, but after hearing about it constantly, it can get a little overwhelming. I wish we could find a way to communicate without it becoming medical suffering sharing hour. Her just telling me she had a bad week is not a burden, and I'm happy to know about that, but it is a burden to me to get that constantly. So one thing that I think is very helpful in all of this is to be able to separate out pleasantness from like goodness, right? That I can experience something unpleasant and it can be good that I experienced that thing, and I can experience something pleasant and it can be bad that I experienced that thing. But again, that's another thing, like anger and violence we conflate because odds are, the vast majority of the time, something that's unpleasant is also not good. But not never. And the biggest problem don't have time to get super into all this. The biggest problem is that we are treating our thoughts and feelings as though they're different than what they really are, which are useful experiences. That's what they're intended to be. But we treat them instead as though they're good or bad experiences. When you're talking, for example, about parentifying children, obviously there are specifics and edge cases. I'm not talking to like everybody's experience, but generally when someone is talking about I was parentified or whatever, what we're speaking about is like, as an adult or over the course of my life, I have experienced unpleasant emotion. Like I've had unpleasant emotional experiences. And some of those, when I explore, like, why do I feel this way? Why is this so painful or difficult for me? Why am I so afraid of this or anxious about that? Then I construct a narrative, or it's offered to me about how that is a result, at least in part, of being parentified by my parents. That makes sense?
It does. It does. But I was thinking slightly to some other extent, like when the parent is, I don't know, getting the child involved in their marital problems, for example, and trying to get him on their side and put a lot on their
this
plate
stuff
that is not something that he should be concerned about.
should be, should not be. I mean, whether or not your parents are getting along, whether or not your parents get divorced, that's impactful to a child. It is something that they care about. So we should hide from them all that stuff.
No, I'm not saying Brandon. I'm
I
just,
know. I'm
where's
pointing
the
out
limit? Where's the limit?
That's
though?
my point.
That's what I wanna.
These
I want people to understand.
questions, and they're the questions that parents generally ask. These questions are based on what will make me feel better about what I'm doing. If I can think, well, this is an okay thing to share or a good thing that I should share, I can feel good about it. And if I think that this is a bad thing and I shouldn't share it, then I don't share it and I can feel good about that. But it's not actually about the kid and what the kid wants. Here's another fun logical. I'm not offering a different set of rules of like, here's the right way to do it. Everything you've been told is wrong. Here are the rules. My point is that it isn't like that. So another logical thing. If what we're saying is that parents, ideally, theoretically, in this, we're assuming all this, what you're talking about is that I don't burden my children. I don't make them feel any sense of responsibility for me or my well-being or whatever. Okay.
Not any sense of responsibility, but
only whatever the appropriate amount.
We're talking about the extreme.
I only make them feel the appropriate amount, whatever it is, right? Like here's the right level of my burdens to share with them, and I do that. So what we're saying there is that that parent has been parentified, right? Like they have learned how to take their responsibility and not put it on the child. How is a person supposed to do that if we also want to make sure that at no point does a child ever get parentified? When is the like magic thing that like I've never been in the role of feeling sense of responsibility for other people to an inappropriate degree? My parents protected me from that, and now I'm supposed to be doing it for my child. How? When did they learn that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Between the age of 18 and 27. It's not so simple. And the point you made earlier is the best one. Yes, breaking the cycle was a good thing, even if I was a bit slow on the uptake. I'll never forget to look on the lady running the foster care training. The lady's face when I said, I understand that corporal punishment is unacceptable with foster kids, but how do I explain why I'm still punishing them, meaning his biological children? Oh, I get it. I shouldn't punish my kids that way either, than with my own kids. And then the other comment, oh yeah, we don't need to get into it. It's kind of a bit of a topic change at the very end. It's dream time, no worries. Yeah, well, I would love to talk more about this. This is all related, right? We just mostly are talking about it, and not just here, but culturally. A lot of the time that people are first really exploring this stuff is in like looking for a mate, partner, searching for a romantic partner, whatever, and or in raising their own children. So if you look around for like talking about mental health stuff and whatever you want to call it, the vast majority of it is either aimed at people who are not kids on behalf of kids, or aimed at people who are dating, in the process of wanting to find some kind of partner or long-term relationships that, whatever, or than being parents themselves. There's other stuff, but the vast majority of it is those three things, because that's when people really start exploring these stuff most commonly. There's reasons for all that. So we're talking about it through parenting, but this is like the core stuff. What do we justify? What is it that whose fault and whose blame and whatever? But here's one. If I accept that there is some, I don't know it, right? But there is a limit. Whatever it is, I know I don't know it, but I know there is some theoretical, like, this is okay, this is not okay, and my job is to do my best to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Well, I put a lot of work into that because, it's important. So what if I come to the determination that what I'm doing is okay, and then I'm told that it's not? This is right where we started. If my child is like, I don't want to be made to feel responsible about blah, blah, blah. Like, well, you're not. Like, no, there's other stuff I'm not telling you about. This is the appropriate. Now you're just being a jerk or whatever. And you and I, our children are on the younger side. My oldest is 9 and my youngest is 4, and you're
6.
Another 6. So we're not talking about, from our personal experience, we're not talking about like another big portion of this of teenagers when you are having bigger conversations about this stuff more frequently. Not that I don't have these conversations.
Yeah, that's also an important factor to take into consideration, the age of the child.
Right. But you also know that your daughter doesn't like adhere to chronological age, like she does everything at exactly the point that all of their children do the same thing. They have their own interests and their own desires and their own. And so what does it eventually come down to? Think of it this way. If you were to try, and people do this, so it's not even just a hypothetical. If you were to try to navigate your, let's say, marriage, right? There's many different versions that long-term or romantic partnerships can take, but we're going to talk right now about like a co-parenting, dyadic, monogamous marriage, right? If you were to navigate that relationship through the lens that there are right and wrong things to do, like there's sharing too little and there's sharing too much. There's not letting me in enough and being emotionally closed off, but there's also like being too emotionally reliant on me. There's all these windows.
Mm-hmm.
And that those are like, I don't know them and you don't know them, but they exist. Guess what all of our arguments are going to be about? I'm going to talk about how what you're doing is a bad thing that a person and anybody would know. If I talk to anybody about what they're doing, they would all say that you are trauma dumping on me and that that's not okay. And you're going to say, if I talk to anybody, they would all agree that you are withholding emotional support from me. And does it actually solve the problem?
Not at all.
No, we just argue even more because we're coming at it from this premise that there's a right or a wrong way for a person to be. And it's not just based on like the individual context and whatever. Mm-hmm. But like you can do something that isn't bad and I can still not like it and not want you to do it. And I can do something that isn't bad and you can not like it.
Yeah.
And I can do something bad and you can like it. Or you can do something bad and I can like it or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what are we trying to teach our kids is when you navigate relationships that way, they don't get better. They get worse. Because you close the whole, we've ranged on a bunch of different things, but the touch point of all these different things is how much should I communicate to another person about what I'm thinking and feeling? And here is an actual rule. The less you communicate to someone else about what you're actually thinking and feeling, the more shallow and fragile your relationship with that person is.
I agree.
So that's not the kind of relationship I want with my kids. And it's not the kind of relationship I want them to have with me. I don't want my kids to come home from school frustrated and angry and then like go off to their room to cry by themselves. But if that's what I do, that's what I do, especially in an effort to be a good parent, then they see that that's what a person who loves you does to protect you. And they do the same thing. This flawed premise that we're basically treating it like we're going to die when they're 18 and we'll have no ability to interact or influence them at all. So we've got 18 years and we got to figure this out and set them on the right path so that everything works out for the rest of their life. That's not how it works. Life will not work out that way. No matter what you do as a person, as a parent, as a friend, whatever, people are going to experience all kinds of difficulties. Like I also hate the advice people say about it. You got to let them fail. No, you don't.
I love
Because
that. I love your approach about this.
they will fail.
Yeah, we don't need to do anything else because they will do it by themselves for sure.
There are going to be all kinds of things they'll fail at that you have no ability to predict or intervene on anyway. So when you
Yeah.
can, you don't need to let them fail. So why do people talk about it? Because it's obviously ridiculous. Why do people talk about it? Because we start with this assumption that I should always, no matter what it is, I should always be willing to do anything and pay any cost to make it so that my child doesn't fail, which is also absurd. But then we need some justification about why sometimes it's okay that I don't go and like spend, that I was going to do this one thing, but I'll cancel it all to help them clean up a mess that they made that they were supposed to clean up or whatever, right? Like I need justification. And so then it becomes like, no, these are the results of your choices and you need to learn to be independent. And like, no, the human relationships are complicated. And like, I like you, Bianca, we have a relationship, a working relationship. I care about you and your well-being and your experience. And also if you told me that like, your house was trashed and you needed to clean it up before your in-laws came for a visit, I'd be like, well, that sucks, but I'm also not going to help you with that. And I wouldn't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
Or even if I did feel bad about that, I'd still like be okay to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be able to do that instead of pretending. I want you to know that I can say that so that you can say, hey, Brandon, will you help me clean up my house? Because you don't have to worry because I'll say no if I don't want to.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, no, if I ask, he'll have to do it. So I got to be really careful about what things I ask for. He'll do it even if he doesn't want to. That's what we want to teach our kids is how to communicate. We want to set up our relationships. That's the most important thing. Even if they leave home at 18 and never move back again, and we never live in the same city and we only see each other rarely and talk I'm not dead and I'm still around. And when they have a problem, I want them to know that if nothing else, they can call me and I'll be there to help talk them through it. I don't want them to think like, oh, I should have known how to fix this already. My dad taught me about this. I can't ask him. That's unfair. Like, no, nothing matters more than the relationship. And I mean this as a therapist who's worked with teenagers and college students. I've been through the like transition from teenager to college dozens of times. And yes, I mean that nothing is more important than the relationship, not grades, not homework, not physical activity, not health. Nothing is more important than the relationship.
I love that, and I hope a lot of parents hear that and just don't feel that pressure anymore. I think that's a big step.
I want parents. I wish I could make them feel not feel pressure, but that's not.
Yeah,
doable.
that's not. That's
So
not,
instead, I want to
what
make
you-
them feel pressure about the right thing,
Yeah.
and the pressure is about the relationship and the communication. That's it. If my kids all of a sudden are like failing at school, like, okay, fine. Like if that's a problem for them, we'll address it. But I've known many people, including clients and including like legitimately brilliant people who ace the SATs and whatever, who don't finish high school or who do finish high school and go to a really fancy college and then have to take a medical withdrawal, a leave of absence before the end of the first semester because they're struggling with suicidal ideation and they never go back to that fancy school. I myself did not go to college straight out of high school. I wasn't going to go to college and I was going to do other things and then after a year I decided to go to college. And the first college I went to was a community college. And the second college I transferred to when I started getting so behind at that first college that I didn't think I could get back from all my F's. And so I just stopped going. And I went to a different community college and didn't transfer the credits over and just started as though I was starting anew. And then I transferred from that to a state university, University of Utah, right? Like nobody knows any of this and nobody cares. I've talked about it before. I just said it right now. Nobody's going to remember it because it's irrelevant. You don't listen to what I'm saying differently. I don't have a different life because I went to community college. I could point out all kinds of research and stats because you said in the abstract, like what if they're struggling to do something that they need to do? But in reality, what people are talking about is school. I've never had a parent come in talking about their kid needing executive functioning support, and the biggest issue was not school and whether they're doing their homework and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to help people understand, like, here's a different, there's a couple. I'm usually very open with talking about what I'm going through, but if I can't close with, yeah, it sucks, it's all right, I'm handling it. If I'm actually wanting help, I try to open with a specific ask. Like, hey, do you have some mental space right now? I'd like to work out a problem with you. That seems to work for me. That's also coming from a place that most of the people I'm communicating with don't live with me. We're starting with at least some geographical boundaries. Yes, and also, and again, while that's good, this is the point I was just about to make actually, is what is good is context dependent. So like here is very well known and widely discussed research. There are all kinds of statistics, various different metrics. It's very robust that children whose parents are married do better than children whose parents are divorced. That's, I'm not even debating that. Of course, it's statistical analysis, not individual circumstance, whatever. However, if you separate out into three categories, children whose parents are happily married, children whose parents are divorced, and children whose parents are married but unhappily to each other, children whose parents are unhappily married to each other do worse than children whose parents are divorced. So, yes, would I prefer that a child have two happily married parents? Yeah. But when they don't, trying to hide it and pretend like that's not happening makes it worse. Would I prefer that I don't get angry with my child or my wife or you or anybody? Yeah, I don't like it. I don't think it's better than not getting angry. That's not the question. The question is, when it happens, is it better to express that and communicate about it or to try and hide it as though it's not happening? That's the thing. Everybody is conflating. If I don't express it or if I don't let other people know about it, then that's still just as beneficial as if it wasn't happening. And that is not true. It's worse. So is it better for kids to have like a pleasant and easy and successful academic experience? Yeah. Is it better for kids who are having a terribly difficult academic experience to somehow, with enough support and tutoring and work and whatever, still get A's and go off to a very fancy college? No, that's worse than just letting a kid in that scenario go to community college or not go to college at all or whatever. That's the problem with expert culture, is we're looking at some objective metrics. This is better, but that's not necessarily better for your child. And sometimes we know that. Sometimes it's like, well, my kid is a wheelchair user, so it's not better for them to, join the track team or whatever at high school. But sometimes we don't know that. We're just like, well, my kid just doesn't like to run, but it would still be better for them to jump. Like, you have no idea why they do or don't like to. You don't know why you like the things that you like.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I
So,
totally agree.
As always, it's annoying to people to do it this way, to poke holes in the questions they're asking first. But the metaphor I try to use is like, it's like if someone's like, all right, so where does the sun go when it's underneath the earth? You're like, wait, what? No, that's not how it works. They're like, look, I don't need to talk about like geocentric or, flat earth, whatever. I just need a practical answer. Where does the sun go when it's under here? I can't answer that question. The premise of the question is flawed. There is no answer if you don't understand that the earth revolves around the sun. We don't need to
But
get
a
into
lot of
that.
parents come for, okay, I have this. If that's not okay, you give me the right answer. You tell me, and it's very hard to accept this way of seeing things.
It is, and it's annoying to do that first, and I do all the other stuff too. And then like working with people specifically, obviously, we're balancing that out, right? Like calling attention to things that are complicated and frustrating to pay attention to, while also providing like useful answers. Ask once and ask why. Or I do like help people come up with organizational systems or whatever. We got to balance those things against each other. But yeah, I'm not looking to just be your new expert that like outranks all the other experts. I'm not here. If you want to talk about yourself and the things you're going through, let's do that. But if you're here to talk about how can you help your children in one way or another, then we don't really need to talk about stuff that's really just about whether or not you feel comfortable or confident or insecure in your actions. That's not the point. That's not what you're, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
if you're saying, how do I help my kid? But then also it has to be something that I feel very confident and good about, like that I'm a good parent if I'm doing it. Those are two different questions.
Exactly.
They overlap a lot. Not always. It's the times when they don't that matters. That's what we're talking. The times when they overlap, nobody's having a problem.
That's true.
So frustrating, but that's why I start with almost everybody, is to make it very clear that all of this is way more complicated than you've ever been given any idea of. And that fortunately we have some built-in stuff to navigate that, but that stuff can't be intellectualized in the kinds of ways that you put on books and podcasts. And so, but yeah, like if my kid, I had a friend once, Susan, I had a friend whose child then like a relatively, like a toddler, but still in diapers, was kicking our friend when she was changing his diaper. And she just was struggling to like, how do I get him to stop? How do I get him to stop? For a while, and finally talked to us about it. And the first thing we said was like, well, do you just say like, ow, when it happens? And she didn't, just to say ow and like walk away, like, ow, that hurts. I'm not going to stand next to you if you're going to kick me.
Yeah.
But like, that should be our first default reaction. It's just that we automatically are like, no, my default reaction is bad. I shouldn't use that as a reference point. Mm-hmm. I'm angry, but I shouldn't be. I'm tired, but I shouldn't be. I like this, but I shouldn't like it. I'm enjoying watching TV with my kids, but I shouldn't enjoy watching TV with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And even if all that was true, and it really isn't, but even if it all was, then best case scenario, you are still raising your children to be people who know that if they're going to be good people and successful and happy people, they have to disregard all of their own thoughts and feelings about what they like and don't like. That if they're mad at someone, they should just swallow it because there's not good enough reason. If someone does something they don't like, they shouldn't say anything to avoid burdening that person.
Then we ask why are we so disconnected from ourselves. That's fine.
Yes. So you want your kids to be like that?
No, not at all.
And it's fine. We do what we do. We get what and we work to do better, and we do that. And I guarantee you, no matter what you do, you're going to mess your kids up in your own way. This is not this is a well-known thing that people talk about. It's no matter what, your kids are going to have their flaws and shortcomings, at least some of which you can point clear lines like, yeah, that's me. I'm sorry about that.
Exactly.
My kids sometimes cry because they feel bad about not being able to help everybody. Like I listened to my 5-year-old crying because the teacher was asking the kids to do something and he wanted to help the teacher, but the kids are his friends and they didn't want to do the thing they were being asked to do. So how do I can't help the teacher and help the kids. They're literally crying, 5 years old, and saying, I just want to make everyone happy. It's like, oh, that's me. Shoot. Dang it. My bad.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I don't shut up. So at least there's that they tell me about it. So yeah, no, my nightmare is having no relationship with my kids. Or they're like, we have a good relationship and we're close. We don't talk like very much or at all or interact with each other, but we like each other. Like that's not what I'm looking for.
Me neither.
Call it parentifying if you want, but my wife and my 3 boys are my 4 best friends. Like I hope that is the case for. I know it's not, but I would like for that to be the case for everybody. That the people with whom you live are your best friends in the world, and that you want to keep it that way. I don't know about anybody else, but I don't have like, oh, this person's my best friend, but I only plan on being friends with them for another 10 years, and then we won't be friends anymore. Like, no, of course I want to be around them.
That makes sense.
That makes me enmeshed or codependent or whatever. Nonsense. Yeah, that's my bad. Susan and I do talk about that when we see the kids struggling with one thing or another. We'll jokingly, but sometimes be like, yeah, that's on me. That's me. My bad. Sorry. I do think it's the hardest thing about, at least in my experience of having kids, emotionally, most unpleasant thing. The actual hardest thing is the logistics of actually like raising children. But the most emotionally difficult part is it's so wonderful to see them do great things and have great experiences and be happy and do cool stuff that you think is cool and other people think is cool. There's nothing wrong with taking pride in that. Like, that's so cool. And when there's times where it's like, oh, they're really great at this thing, and it's also something I'm really great at, you can take pride in that. Like, I have instilled in them a love of music and singing and whatever. And then there's times where like they experience pain or suffering or whatever, and that sucks no matter what. And if there's ever a time, there will be, where they experience some pain or suffering, and you're like, oh, they got that from me too.
Yeah.
That's the worst. And then it puts you in a position where it's like, okay, so I actually have to kind of work on this now. Like, it never was an issue before that I was a person who would give and give and give and give and not ask for much in return and like take on the responsibility for helping everyone be happy all the time or whatever, because everybody benefited from that. And now for the first time, there's a person that like I can see suffering because of it. It's like, oh man, I don't even like. I gotta like start doing that. Working
That's
on
why
that.
they are helping us grow.
All right, we gotta wrap up. We're way over. I'm late for my next thing. Good to be with
Okay.
you all. Bass Decider, Coach Fritz, Caitlin Ruby Miller. Thank you for commenting.
Bye,
Bianca,
everyone.
wonderful to be with you. Thank you for
Thank you for
joining me
having
today.
me.
Yes. We'll be back next week, same time. Goodbye.